Hello, President Trump. I apologize that I am nervous and most of this I'll have to read because I don't have it memorized. But I'm making you this video to ask you to veto H.R. 4174, the Foundations for Evidence-Based Privacy Act. And the reason I'm asking you to do this is that I've read it with a fine-tooth comb. I've done the verbal algebra necessary, meaning I find the definitions where they've hidden them in the back of the bill, and I plug them in where they're used throughout the bill, and I can see exactly what this bill is doing. And it is bad, and you need to veto this bill. During your campaign, you were in New Hampshire, and you responded to a woman named Ann Banfield, and you said, close the loopholes. You gotta have privacy. You gotta have privacy. I'm asking you to keep your campaign promise by vetoing H.R. 4174. There are a lot of people that think this bill is great, a lot of people who didn't read it and voted yes for it anyway, but I am going to use the bill itself, the language in the bill, to show you why you must vote no. So first of all, number one, the bill creates an inventory of citizens, their land, and their money. It includes identifiable information. Number two, it is actively hostile toward and seeks to alter policies and laws that uphold privacy rights, such as state statutes. The bill allows the federal government to collect, archive, and share personally identifiable information. The bill authorizes government to break confidentiality pledges and punish citizens based on the perceived accuracy of the data that they submit to the government. The bill actively seeks to convert databases that don't match its machine interoperability standards. An agent who shared or sold sensitive information from these databases might receive zero punishment. The bill forces agencies and instrumentalities to share with other agencies. The bill empowers the deep state, not allowing elections for data heads. Bureaucratic appointees only can lead these statistical agencies. The bill authorizes federal agents to use private organizations and individuals to mine data. The bill creates an inventory of citizens is the one that I want to start talking about. So there's a new federal comprehensive data inventory that will feed into a federal data catalog, according to the bill. And its statistical data includes the whole or relevant groups or components within the economy, society, or the natural environment. That's on page 17. What else is there on Earth that isn't covered under people, money, or nature itself? So when the fact sheet that's been put out on this bill, which I call the deceit sheet, when it says that no new federal database is being created, that is a complete lie. Because yes, they're using existing databases, definitely using what's already been put out by the states and other agencies, but this is something new, to have everybody having to, mandating that everybody has to give their data to these three designated agencies, the Census Bureau, the Labor Department, and the Economic Analysis Department. That is new, and so it is a new federal system. An interesting spot to detect this in action is on page 19, where an exception is granted to the Energy Information Administration only. So you kind of wonder, why is this administration only, this agency is given special treatment? But it says here, data or information acquired by the Energy Information Administration under a pledge of confidentiality shall not be disclosed in identifiable form. This means, obviously, that data acquired by agencies other than the Energy Information Administration, even under a pledge of confidentiality, can be disclosed in identifiable form. And the fact is, this also shows that those in the CEP and others who are saying that PII, or personally identifiable information, isn't being collected, clearly it is being collected. If it says right here, you aren't allowed to disclose it in identifiable form under a pledge of confidentiality only if it's for this one agency. So this is just so obvious that that's what they're doing. Okay, fact number 2. It is actively hostile to laws that uphold individual or local privacy rights. So you know that the bill doesn't clearly forbid any type of data sharing, nor does it forbid anyone from at least requesting sensitive data access. And the bill also treats privacy statutes and privacy policies as obstacles. For example, on page 2, it says, evidence building plans shall contain a list of any challenges to developing evidence, including any statutory or other restrictions. Also on page 22, statutory constraints limit the ability of these agencies to share data. So I like to think of this as feeding the god of data. And all these people who just think that data is the most important thing in life, and that by getting all this robust data, life is going to be greatly improved, they are so persuaded that this is true that they've forgotten privacy rights and they dismissed them. In fact, in this bill, which is 30 pages long, privacy rights as a term is never mentioned at all. Never mentioned one single time. So state privacy laws are limiting the federal government's ability to share data. This reminds me of the Princess Bride movie. So Prince Humperdinck is trying to steal Princess Buttercup, and Vizzini says, you're trying to kidnap what I've rightfully stolen. So do you understand the analogy there? It's Prince Humperdinck is the bill, Prince Buttercup is the student data, and Vizzini is the state longitudinal databases. They shouldn't have been collecting personally identifiable information on students without parental consent or individual consent anyway. But since they did take it, now the feds want to steal it. So it's really quite an ugly situation. But educating people about what's really going on, I think, can prevent it from becoming any worse or becoming like China, where citizens have absolutely no privacy and thus no rights. Some people don't understand how closely privacy is linked to liberty. But if you look at a country like China, where they're given behavioral points, reward or punishment points based on their sesame points or whatever they call it, their lives are restricted. If they criticize their government the way I'm criticizing right now, this bill that Congress passed, they lose points, and those points have a real impact on their lives. They might not be able to ride the bus. They get excluded from privileges because their point system is down. And the same thing goes on the reward side. So is that really the way we want America to be? Because that is what's going to end up happening if we allow all these agencies to know absolutely everything about us. Okay, fact number 3. The bill allows the federal government to collect and archive and share personally identifiable data. The bill redefines many terms so that the words don't work the way you think that they are supposed to work. So, for example, the bill defines a non-statistical purpose as affecting the rights, privileges, and benefits of a particular identifiable respondent. So that's definitely a bad thing. I think everyone can agree that a non-statistical purpose would be a bad thing. But in contrast, the bill defines statistical purpose as analysis without identifying the individuals. So that makes it seem like, wow, statistic purpose is good, non-statistical purpose is bad. But there's more to it, because the bill on the same page defines statistical activities as a different thing than statistical purpose. Statistical activities are absolutely everything and anything. It says they're components within the economy, society, or the natural environment. So it can be information about one person or one family, and that definitely is personally identifiable. So both non-statistical and statistical activities do include personal information. So right there, I think that's pretty clear that this bill doesn't care about privacy. In fact, if the bill really cared about privacy, they would have forbidden using shall language. They would have forbidden anyone from sharing personally identifiable information without informed consent, written informed consent of that individual. Nowhere in the bill is that ever asked for. All of the shall language, and there's a lot of it, the bill uses shall over and over and over and over and over again, but it's always mandates for data sharing. Shall make available, shall be able to access, shall designate a bureaucrat to be in charge of the agency. It's always shall for the data mining, but it's never shall for the privacy, and that's an important thing to notice. Fact number 4, the bill authorizes the government to punish citizens based on the accuracy level of the data they submit. Can you believe that? The punishment is written into the bill. The bill reveals that its agents plan to break confidentiality when citizens or organizations are accused of submitting false information, whatever that means. Such citizens will be punished in 2 ways. First, the government pledges of confidentiality will be broken, and the person or organization's identifiable information will be used. And second, the person or organization will be prosecuted by law enforcement because their data will be turned over to law enforcement. That's on page 20. My question is, who gets to find faults? Who will determine whether the information really was false? Who ensures the information was really submitted by the person being punished? How does the government return confidentiality to the person if the accusation proves to be mistaken? And P.S., they're claiming they're not even collecting personally identifiable information in this bill. So how is this even possible? Fact number 5, the bill actively seeks to convert databases that don't match its machine interoperability standards. On page 7, there's guidance to make data open by default, and it says agencies are advised to convert data that are not machine readable. Ensure that any public data asset of the agency is machine readable. Everything is to flow interoperably toward the 3 main designated agencies, the Bureau of the Census, the Bureau of Labor, and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And let me add here that the Bureau of Labor is poised to be combined with the Department of Education. Right now they're calling it the Committee on Education and the Workforce or something like that until they combine the bureaus officially. So that means that all of this data that our children are having collected on them every day, including the tests, unless you of course opt out, and all of the technological assignments, unless of course your school is using paper and pencil, then all that information is all accessed. And these kids can't give informed consent, and their parents aren't given the opportunity to give informed consent because school is compulsory, right? Unless you happen to go to private school or homeschool. Fact number 6, an agent who shared or sold sensitive information from these databases might receive 0 punishment. There is a little loophole under fines and penalties. It says on page 21, an employee or an agent who willfully discloses information in any manner to a person or agency not entitled to receive it shall be guilty of a Class C felony and imprisoned for not more than 5 years or fined not more than $25,000 or both. So they could slap them with 5 years in jail and a $250,000 fine, or nothing, because it says not more than 5 years. That could be 1 day or no days, right? Not more than $250,000 could be nothing at all. So this is very loopholey as far as a punishment for anyone who sells or shares data that they've accessed. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. You have to veto this bill. Fact number 7, the bill forces agencies and instrumentalities to share data with other agencies. Page 26 says, presumption of accessibility for statistical agencies and units. The head of an agency shall make any data asset maintained by the agency available upon request to any statistical agency or unit. By the way, unit sounds to me like it could be one person. A very, very, very small unit can make a request and they can presume accessibility. Fact number 8, the bill empowers the deep state. It weakens representation, our constitutional right to representative government. So on page 10, it says that every agency head shall, to the maximum extent practicable, develop and maintain a comprehensive data inventory. Okay, there's that shall language again, forcing us to create this huge monster that none of us have any power to influence because all of the people who are in charge have to be members of the deep state. By definition, it says appointees only. You can't have elected people there. You can't have elected school board or elected anybody. It has to be appointees that are allowed to be the top dogs here. Fact number 9, the bill authorizes the federal agents to use private organizations and individuals to help mine the data. On page 5, agencies are told to work on interagency and private sector coordination. Does that mean they're coordinating with Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and every other company you can think of? Google, Microsoft? On page 9, the bill asks agents to engage the public and calls for hosting challenges, competitions, events, or other initiatives designed to create additional value from public data assets. Fact number 10, the bill replaces informed consent with pointless informed public comment. What I mean by that is, on page 24 it says, whenever a written agreement concerns data that respondents were required by law to report, and the respondents were not informed that the data could be shared, the terms of such agreement shall be described in a public notice, a minimum of 60 days for public comment. Notice that there's no consequence or change that can happen due to the public comment. There's no mention of data after the comment time then not being shared. So instead of having informed consent, we've replaced that with informed public comment, which is, again, completely ridiculous. We all know what public comment does. Nothing. They just check the box and then they do whatever they want to do anyway. That's how the bureaucracies work. If they're not elected, they don't answer to the people. Fact number 8. The bill empowers... Oh, I already read that one. Sorry. Oh, that was number 10. Okay, good. So, as I've been tweeting at Real Donald Trump and at the CEP and my representatives and other people, I have been getting an interesting cover up a little bit from somebody at the CEP, and I think it's funny. This individual said, "Oh, but we've had all these privacy experts going over this stuff, and they love it." And he gave me these quotes and all these lovely things. I don't care about the quotes. I don't care about the agencies. I don't care how many degrees that data expert or that privacy expert has. I'm looking at the bill, and I can read English, and I can see what it says. So it's a game. It's a word game. All the confidentiality stuff, like I said before, it's all breakable, it's all loopholey, and there's no shall language there. They never forbid the agents to look at personally identifiable information or to share it. It's not in shall language, it's not forbidden. And what's worse, probably, is they give the power to the agencies that they could share that data. Whether it's in identifiable form or not, they have the data, and they can, in many cases, convert it to personally identifiable, and then they're required to share it on request. This is a ridiculous bill. You have to veto. I just wanted to make one last point, and that is just appealing to logic. If there is such a thing as information that should never be shared, whether it's for national security or whether it's just constitutional freedom, the freedom to be left alone, the freedom to live my life the way I want without being data mined and without having the government know more about me than I know about myself, by combining my shopping records and my school records and my medical records and my social security records and what my neighbors say about me and my Facebook. It's creepy. It's so creepy to think that all these agencies and private businesses are all going to know, if they access it, more information than I know about my own life. That's wrong. That's just flat out wrong. But anyway, accepting the fact that there is information that should be kept a secret. There is information that should not be shared. You might think that this is obvious, but it's not. These people who are obsessed with research, they don't believe in any secrecy. They don't believe in privacy. They think it's completely negligible, at least for other people. It's not an important point, clearly, because it's not in the bill. It's not protected properly in the bill. And privacy statutes are going to be attacked thanks to the suggestions in this bill, including, by the way, the student unit record ban, that federal protective ban on student unit records that I know will affect all of the college students filling out their FAFSA and all these things, that the CEP recommended that in the future that will be looked at, changed, altered, taken away. They didn't dare put it in this bill, but they will put it in the next one, because remember, this one is called Foundations for Evidence-Based Policymaking. Anyway, back to my train of thought. So if there is information that is not to be shared, then why don't you use shall language to forbid it from being shared? Why? And if that information is ever given power, in other words, if agents have the power over that information, then you've just as well said that somebody can share it. Does that make sense? Power should not be given to people to say what should never be said. If you really don't want it said, if you really don't want it shared, if you really don't want it viewed, then why are you giving people power to do so with very little punishment or motivation not to do so? It's just crazy. It's just crazy. Matthew 6:24 in the Bible, it says, a man cannot serve two masters. And it's the same way in this bill. You can't serve privacy, meaning serving the people, serving what's in the best interest of individual freedom and liberty and privacy, and also serve big data at any cost. You can't go in both directions at once. This bill wants you to believe that a bird can fly north and south simultaneously, and it can't. You either have the shall language favoring the big data, which this bill does, or you have the shall language favoring privacy, which this bill does not do, not even once. I want to say one last thing. I know I said one last thing once before, but I'm going to do it again. 2 years ago, when I started listening to the audio and watching the YouTube, which of course they took down, of the CEP, the Commission of Evidence-Based Policy, the people that created this bill or pushed it through, they said something so interesting. They were deliberately hiding the truth from the public about the bill. And some individual in the audience asked the question, well, if you've got PII from Social Security and you have PII from the census and you have PII from all these different agencies, how are you going to really combine that without getting yourself in a lot of trouble with the American people? And the CEP leader, the head, I don't remember his name, he said, well, we have to do this in baby steps. I don't think it would fly if we ripped off the Band-Aid all at once. He said that. I have it transcribed on my blog. You can read it word for word. It was a long question and a long answer. But in the end, that's what he said. It wouldn't fly if you ripped off the Band-Aid. So they've taken 2 years, and they've left out a lot of the recommendations. The CEP made a lot more recommendations than what made it into this bill, because they know that there are people who do care about privacy. I want you, whoever is listening to this, besides hopefully President Trump, to contact your senators and your representatives and say, why did you vote for this? Or thank them if they didn't. There were a few who didn't. But it seems like all the good guys voted for it too. Why did you vote for it? Did you really read it? Did you notice the shall language? Did you read the definitions? Did you notice that it says any component of nature, economy, or society will be data mined? Did you notice that it said that data access shall be granted? Did you notice that all the agencies have to share their information? Did you know that a lot of personally identifiable information is already in these state receptacles, such as the state longitudinal database systems of all the schools? Every single state in this country took millions of dollars from the federal government to build a school system database, state longitudinal database system, that had to be built to federal interoperability standards. That was like 9 years ago. All of the schools, all of the students' data is ready to be picked and plucked by these agencies. And I don't want to live in a Big Brother society. I want to live free. And I think you do too. Please vote, veto HR 4174. Please stop this terrible bill.